Do you know the best way to showcase your skills to employers or potential clients? Is the CV going to cut it? In today's world, most clients are looking for digital presence. And if you don't already have one, now is the time to start. Presenting a well-digitalized, flexible portfolio will definitely make you stand out from the crowd. Hello there, and welcome to a project video where you'll build and deploy your own ultimate web development portfolio from scratch. The portfolio you'll build in this video is like no other portfolio page you've ever seen so far. You can change the content of this beautifully designed website within minutes, at any time, from anywhere. As your skills grow, this portfolio will grow with you. Usually, the process of creating a premium custom portfolio would take you weeks, if not months, to complete. Thankfully, I'm going to teach you how you can do this in just one video so that you can use all the extra time to build projects you're going to fill the portfolio with. I'll also teach you how you can make all of the content on this page completely modifiable through a modern content platform. This is a project for developers of all skill levels. We're going to use React, SCSS, Sanity, and I'll teach you all the best practices that come into play when building a premium website using only the newest technologies. You might be wondering, what are the prerequisites for building such an amazing website? Don't worry about that. Besides some JavaScript and light React.js knowledge, this course is completely beginner-friendly. We're going to start easy and then move to more complex topics as we go. Every step of the way will be explained. Alongside building this portfolio, you'll learn React functional components and their reusability, React file and folder structure, the use of SCSS and Flex, pleasant animations using the most popular animation library, Framer Motion, and most importantly, you'll learn how to use Sanity Content Platform. Sanity will allow us to dynamically manage the content of the entire application. To support this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If this video reaches 15,000 likes, I'm recording another video just like this one. Also, make sure to stick till the end of the video where I'll challenge you to add your own code to this project to make it even better. At the end of the video, we'll also deploy the portfolio so that you can share it with your friends and get a job. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. As we always do, we're going to start from bare beginnings by creating an empty folder on our desktop. I'm going to name it JSM_portfolio, but feel free to use any name you like. After you have your empty folder, open up your code editor of choice. In this case, I'll be using Visual Studio Code, and I can simply drag and drop the folder into an empty Visual Studio Code window. Once we're in here, we can go to View and then Terminal. We can also run the clear command to have a clean working environment. In here, we'll be able to initialize our React application, but also our Sanity Studio. So in this case, before initializing our new React application, let's create an empty folder for our Sanity backend. We can right-click right here and create a new folder called backend_sanity. To start off and come to this page, you can click the link in the description. The Sanity CMS team was kind enough to provide you with double the free included monthly usage. That includes 200,000 API requests, 1 million API CDN requests, and 20 gigabytes of bandwidth. That's going to be more than enough for 99.9% of people, myself included. So what we can do is copy this or press right here, go back into our application, change the directory or CD into backend Sanity, and then we can simply paste what we copied. This is going to install Sanity CLI globally, and then we can press enter one more time, which is going to initialize our new Sanity project with the JavaScript Mastery coupon code applied. So with that said, we are now inside of Sanity's command line interface, and we'll have to answer a few questions so that Sanity sets up the best project structure for us. The first thing we have to do is to log in. In this case, I'm going to log in using Google, so I'm simply going to press enter. There we go, login successful. Now we can simply close this tab and return to the terminal. The second thing we have to do is choose a project name. So in this case, I'm going to do JSM_portfolio. In your case, feel free to use whatever you'd like. In here, we can just press Y and then press enter to use the default dataset configuration. And for the project output path, we can simply press enter because the default configuration path has been already chosen. And finally, Sanity offers a lot of predefined templates so that you can quickly start with your project. You can choose a movie project, an e-commerce project, blog, or in our case, we're going to start with a clear project with no predefined schemas. I'm going to teach you how to do absolutely everything from scratch. Right now, Sanity's CLI is creating the default project files. Everything is being set up as we speak. Let's give it a minute and then we'll be right back. And the setup has been successful. Now we can run Sanity Docs to open up the documentation, Sanity Manage to open the project settings, Sanity Help to explore the manual, but most importantly, we can run Sanity Start to open up our studio. So let's go ahead and do just that. Sanity Start. Sanity Start just started. I went ahead and sped up the process for you, but most importantly, we can now go to localhost 3333. So let's go ahead and control click it. In here, we'll also have to log in. And this is our Sanity desk. Right now, we have an empty schema, meaning that we have to add new schemas to our project. So for now, we can stop this from running by pressing Ctrl C, and we can focus on checking out all the files and folders that were created for us by Sanity. Most importantly, the only thing we care about here is the schemas folder. And right now, we just have one schema.js file right here. To create our first real schema, we can right-click under schemas and create a new file. Let's go ahead and create a schema for our testimonials first. So testimonials.js. Inside of here, we can simply write plain JavaScript code. For example, export, default, and our entire schema is going to be just one object. Inside of our schema, we're going to have some properties. We need to have a name, which is going to be testimonials. Then we're going to have the title, which is going to be the same thing, but with a capital T. Then we have to have a type of that specific schema, and the type is going to be document. And finally, we need to specify an array of fields that our testimonials object is going to have. And the fields are going to be objects. The first object has to have a name, and the name in this case is actually going to be the name of the person leaving the testimonial. Then we're going to have a title. So we're following the same structure as we already have here. And that title is going to be name. And finally, the type of our name is going to be string. Now we can duplicate this object 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. And for the second one, we're going to say company. So name is actually going to be the company, title company with a capitalized C, and it's also going to be a string. Then we need to have the image URL of the person leaving the testimonial. And that's also going to be img URL like this. And finally, this is going to be of a type image. And when we have images, we also have to provide options, which is an object where we're gonna have hotspot is equal to true. Now, so far, all of this seemed incredibly intuitive. We have object with names, titles, and types, and everything is as we're writing plain JavaScript. Now, this is the first time that you might think what this hotspot actually means. Well, the key is whenever you're using some kind of software, always look through the documentation. One Google search is going to lead you to docs presenting images, and then if you search for hotspot, you can immediately see what does that mean. That simply means that the user will be able to choose the crop while uploading the image. This is the feature that you would have to implement on your own if we weren't using Sanity. With that said, the final thing in our testimonial, which is going to be the feedback message, of course, feedback with a capital F, and that is also going to be a string. And we just wrote our first schema. We can go back into schema.js, and right here we can import it by saying import testimonials, and that's gonna be coming from /testimonials. And finally, we just have to add our schema in the array of types. Right here, we're just gonna type testimonials. And that is it. Now we can go to view and then terminal, and let's run Sanity start one more time to see if something happened in our Sanity desk. We can control click the link. And as you can now see, this looks quite different. Now we actually have the content here, and you can see our first document, which is testimonials. Now we can click right here and click create, and you'll be able to create a new document instantly. In here, we have some references for our old social media project. That's a nice throwback, but that's not going to be helpful in this case, where we can simply use the name such as Michael. The company can be Google. I found an interesting person on Google, and we can simply drag and drop. There we go. Now, of course, you can click this pencil right here, and we can crop him out to make a perfect circle just like this. Well, it's not perfect, but it should be good enough. And finally, what is he going to say? Well, let's say, great job, would recommend. And we can click publish. As soon as we click publish, the document is live. What we've done just now is basically implemented an entire database. Think about that. We've created a schema and added the ability for users to add new content to that database. How crazy is that? Imagine if we were working on a MERN application, MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. Just imagine how much time would we have to spend just to come to this point where we're at right now. It would take hours to set everything up, but we've done it in a couple of minutes using Sanity. Now that you understand how adding schemas work, we can go back to our Visual Studio Code, and we can continue adding all of the other necessary schemas. Since the process for adding all of these schemas is going to be basically identical, I'm going to leave a link to the folder containing all of the files for all the necessary schemas. Then you can simply drag and drop, and just like that, all of the other schemas are going to get populated right in here. Everything from works, brands, abouts, experiences, everything is right here. And as you can see, this is nothing more than what you've seen so far. If we go back to our Sanity desk now, you can see that the schemas for the entirety of our content are right here, right now. There is our testimonial, and as we go through the application, it's going to be incredibly useful that we already have all of this coded out. With that said, our work on the backend is now fully done. Now we can start creating our front-end application, and then later on, we're going to connect the two. So let's press Ctrl C, clear it. To initialize our React application, we can run npx create-react-app, and we can simply call it frontend _ React. This is going to initialize our entire React application in this folder. While this is initializing, I definitely want to say that it's been amazing using Sanity so far. It's really simple and efficient. In a matter of few minutes, we've created an entire database and we can immediately start adding documents to that database as we go. So it's going to be incredibly fun connecting this to the React application that we're going to create right now. And that application is, as you've seen in the intro, the ultimate web development portfolio. So let's wait until our React application is initialized and then we'll dive right in. To start with our React.js application, we can first open up the front-end React folder and see what we have in there. The most important in here is the source folder, where the entirety of our React application is going to be in. As you can see, we have a lot of files here with already some predefined code, but we won't be using any of that. So what I like to do is right-click the source and then completely delete it. Then you can right-click the front-end React and create a new folder, also called src. Inside of there, we can create a file that every single React application needs to have, and that is the index.js file. Inside of here, we can import React from React, and this is also the only file where we're going to import React DOM from React-DOM. This is going to help us connect with our HTML file. We are also going to import the app component, which we don't already have, but we can just write this here for the future. So from /app, and then we can also import the /index.css, which we also don't already have, but we're soon going to create it. And finally, we can say React DOM.render, and we can render our app right here, and then say document.getElementById, and we need to get a div with an ID of root. Let me explain what does this line actually do. If we go into the public folder and then index.html, inside of here, you can see that we have some meta tags, but I'm going to space it out properly. We have some comments, some links, but most importantly, we just have a body with a single div. And that div has an ID of root. So in this case, we're going to put our entire React application right here inside of this div with an ID of root. And that is exactly what we've done right here. We connected our app straight to the div with an ID of root. With that said, of course, now we need to create our app.js. So right here, create a new file, app.js, inside of the source folder. Our app is going to be a simple React functional component, so we can run RAFCE. This is going to instantly create a simple React functional component. If this didn't autofill for you, you can go to extensions and then search for ES7 snippets, and then we should see ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippets. You can install it, and then once you type RAFCE, you should get your component right here. We'll be using this a few times across this entire application, but if this doesn't work for you for any reason, you can of course type it out by hand. Inside of our app later on, we're going to import all of our other components, but for now, let's just leave it empty like this, and I always like to end everything with semicolons, so we're going to add them right here. Now we have our app, but we're missing the second piece of the puzzle, which is the index.css. So let's create a new file right here called index.css. This CSS file is going to contain just some basic setup. So down in the description, you'll be able to find a link for this entire CSS file, which is less than 20 lines. And as you can see, it only has a font import and the setup of some basic colors. That's about it. So again, just find it below, copy and paste it into index.css. Once you've done that, we have to install all the necessary dependencies needed to run our React application. So in this case, we can go to View and then Terminal. Right here, you can clear it if it's not clear already. To install all of the necessary dependencies we're going to use throughout this project, we first need to cd or change the directory into frontend React. There, we can run npm install, and then we can start listing out all the dependencies that we need for our project. The first one is going to be add sanity / client. Then we're going to need add sanity / image -url. Then we're going to need framer -motion for the animations, as well as node -sass for our SCSS files. We're going to also use react-icons for all the icons that you'll be able to see on the page, and I think that should be it. If we're missing something, we can easily install it later on. This process should take about a minute, so I'll be right back. And there we go, all of the packages have been installed, and you can see them inside of our package.json inside of the frontend React. So now if we go back to our index, you can see that we have this app, we have this index, and everything seems to be ready to go. Instead of having this as a div, let's just change this to h1 so that we can see it more clearly once we run our application. And to run it, the only thing you have to do is press npm start and then press enter. This is going to open up the application on localhost 3000. And there we go. If we've done everything correctly so far, we can see an h1 that simply says app. But now is the time that we implement the entire file and folder structure for our project, so it's easier for us to develop it as we go along. So first of all, we're going to create a few folders inside of the source. The first folder we can create is of course going to be the components folder. This is going to be for all of our smaller components. Then we're going to have the assets folder, and that's going to be for all of our images, which you'll be able to download from this video later on. Then we're going to have a constants folder, and this is going to be for imports of all of the files that we're going to constantly use. Then we're going to need our container file, and this is going to be for all of our bigger containers, meaning components containing multiple components inside of themselves. And these are the most important folders that we need to have. But of course, the files are what actually matters. So let's go ahead and create some containers first. Each one of our containers is going to be another folder, and it's going to say the name of our component or a container. So the first one can be about, and then inside of there, we're going to create the about.jsx file as well as about.scss file. Then we can create a new folder inside of the container, which is going to be our footer. Inside of the footer, we're going to repeat the process, footer.jsx as well as footer.scss. We're going to also need a header, so let's add a header component or a container, and that's going to be header.jsx as well as header.scss. And of course, I'm going to explain later on why we're using SCSS and not CSS and why is it superior. Then we're going to have our skills section. Inside of the skills, we're going to of course have skills.jsx as well as skills.scss. Finally, we're going to need a testimonial, which is going to have a testimonial.jsx as well as testimonial.scss. And one last folder is going to be work to showcase all of our works, which is going to have work.jsx as well as work.scss. That's great. Now we have all of these components, and we can start by creating the basic boilerplate structure for all of them. So let's start from top to bottom, and let's simply write RAFCE and press enter. This is going to create the about section. While we're here, we can also import the /about.scss, and we can copy that because we're going to need that for all the other components. So now let's repeat the process. Let's go to footer, RAFCE, enter, and then simply paste this here and change it to footer.scss. I know this is a lot of manual work, but if we do this at the start, it's going to be so much easier to code the application later on. Now let's move to our header. Again, RAFCE, paste this here, and change it to header. Let's repeat the process for skills, paste the styles here, change it to skills, and only 2 more times left to go. RAFCE for the testimonial, as well as testimonial.scss. And finally, work right here. We can again paste this line and change it to work. Now we're done with all of our containers, and we are ready to start importing them straight inside of our app. So if we go here, we could do something like this. Import, let's say about from /container/about. And then we can repeat this process for every single component. But as you can see, that would clutter our view inside of the app.jss. So one great React.js trick I can give you is to export all of these components straight from the container. So the only thing you have to do to make this happen is right-click container, click new file, and create an index.js file inside of it. There, we can simply say export, default as, and then the name of the component, for example, about, and then from /about/about. And we can repeat this process for as many components as we have. So the second one on our list is going to be footer. By the way, to highlight all of these things, I'm holding Alt and then double clicking the words. That way I can change everything at once. So we're going to repeat the process for header, for skills as well. Then we're going to do testimonial. And finally, that's going to be work. Great. Now, what this file allowed us to do is to go back into app, and now we can import components. Instead of as a default import, we can use curly braces right here, and then we can list all of our components one by one in one single line. That's going to be about, footer, header, skills, testimonial, and work. And all of that is coming from /container. This is much more readable. The only thing we can do right now is create a div right here. That div is going to have a class name equal to app. We're going to add it later on. But now in here, we can list all of our components one by one. That's going to be header as a self-closing component. Then we're going to have about. Below that, we're going to have work. Then we're going to have skills. Finally, testimonial. And at the end, of course, footer with our contact page. The only component we're missing is going to be our navigation bar. And that's for a reason. Our navigation bar is not going to be a container. Rather, it's going to be a simple component. So what we can do is go inside of the components, create a new folder called navbar. Inside of there, we can create a navbar.jsx file and also a navbar.scss file. Inside of there, we can repeat the process, RAFCE, and then import /navbar.scss. We can do the same situation inside of the components, create an index.js file where we can say export default as navbar from /navbar/navbar. Now, if we go back into the app, we can repeat the process by saying import navbar from /components. And we can list it right here, of course, at the top. Great. Now we have all of the components and containers that we're going to use throughout our application. So let's check it out in the browser. If we've done everything correctly, you should be able to zoom in by holding Control and then using a mouse wheel to see all of our components right here. Of course, this is looking awful right now. We just have a white empty page with all of the components, but each component is just a div containing the word, which is the name of that component. Of course, now our goal is to properly style and implement the logic for every single one of these sections, which are at the end of this video going to form a beautiful React portfolio. So I know this was a lot of manual work, but are you ready to start coding this out? We're of course going to start from top to bottom, implement the navbar, header, and then go to all the most exciting sections, which is the about and the portfolio section. Just one final thing we have to do before starting implementing our navbar is just implementing some general styles that we're going to use across our entire application. Remember this index.css? Well, we have to use these colors somewhere. And we also have to implement this basic app class name. So to do that, we can create a new file inside of the source called app.scss. And this is the last time that I'm going to provide you with some code, but this file simply contains the setup for all of the things we've done before, using the primary color inside of the app, specifying some classes with some background colors, primary backgrounds, and then setting up the container sizing and so on. Again, there isn't a lot of real logic here. It's mainly setting up classes that we're going to use later on. For example, instead of using these 3 lines every time we want to center something, we'll be just able to use this one single class. And the situation is the same with all of the other classes added here. They're just here to help us with the future development. So the link to this SCSS code is going to be down in the description as well, inside of a GitHub gist. Once that is done, we should be able to just import it inside of the app.js by saying import.app.scss. And now we are ready to start creating our portfolio. Before we do that, let's just open up the browser and see what changes did this app.css file do. There we go. You can see that the only thing that happened was applying some fonts and also this background color that you can see right here. With that said, we are ready to start with the first section and component of our portfolio, which is the navigation bar. Now that we're starting to code our components, it might be a good idea to put the browser and the editor side by side so that we can see the changes we code live. To do that, I'm going to collapse our Explorer and then open up the browser. And there we go. This is already looking better. We can see what we're doing just on the side. So let's start with our navigation bar. This is going to be an HTML5 semantic tag called nav. Inside of this nav, we're going to have a few components. More specifically, we're going to have a div, and this div is going to contain our logo. So right inside of it, we can add an image that's going to have a source equal to images.logo. Every image also needs to have an alt or an alternative tag, and that's going to simply say logo. Now, you might be wondering, where are these images coming from? As I've told you, I'm going to provide you with all the assets for this project. So down below in the description, you'll be able to find a zipped assets folder. You can simply unzip it and then paste it straight into the source folder. There we go. I copied mine. I'm going to delete the original and just rename this to assets. As soon as you do that, you can notice that you're going to have a lot of images, about 1, 2, 3, 4, and then images of brands, as well as some backgrounds. Everything is prepared for you. Now that we have those images, just so we don't have to import one by one each time, we're going to do a similar thing that we've done with the components using that one single index.js file. So inside of the constants, we can create an images.js file. Inside of there, we're going to simply import every single image and then export it. Again, the images.js file is going to be in a gist down below. As you can see, just importing every single image there is and then exporting it so that we can more easily import it in one line with a meaningful name. And of course, we can create one index.js file right here in the constants to export all of these images. That's going to look something like this: export default as images, and then that's going to be coming from /images. What this is going to allow us to do is to go back into navbar, and now simply we can say import images from //constants. And every time you have to use something from images, you'll always be able to import this same line. And then all of our files are going to be right in here in this images object. That's the exact reason why we're doing this. And again, I know that there is some code you have to write, but trust me, this is a pro tip that's going to help you with importing all of these images, because you don't have to worry about file names, and you also don't have to import all of them in a new line. Imagine, usually you would have to import every single file in a new line, but now all of the images are right here in this one images object. Isn't that great? Okay, so now we have our logo. You can see it right here, Mikhail, or Michael as we said. And right now we can continue with our navigation bar. Below this div, we're gonna have a UL, or an unordered list. This unordered list is going to loop through all of the elements that we need to have in our navigation bar. So we can open a dynamic block of code, create an array, and there start listing all of the elements, such as home, about. Then we're gonna also have work, skills, and finally contact. Once you have that array, we can call a dot map on it, create an instant return function like this, where we don't have a curly brace here, we just have a regular parenthesis. So for each one of our items, we're gonna get that item, meaning contact, skills, work, and so on, and we want to return something. More specifically, we want to return a list item. That list item has to have a key, which is going to be equal to a template string saying link dash and then item to make it unique. Inside of our li, we're going to have an empty div that we'll be able to style later on. And then, of course, we're going to have an anchor tag that's going to have an href equal to a template string of hash and then item. This is going to lead us straight to that section of the page. And inside of the anchor tag, we can simply render the item. Let's save it. And right now, you can see that this just created the links for all of our sections: home, about, contact, work, skills, and contact. Looks like we have contact 2 times, so this one is extra. There we go. So this is going to be our navigation bar for the desktop devices. But of course, this isn't looking like a nav bar so far. What we have to do is, of course, implement the styles. So our nav is going to have a class name equal to app__navbar. And this __ is a part of BEM methodology. By doing a simple Google search, you'll be able to see that you can create clean CSS with BEM methodology. BEM is essentially a front-end naming method, so it isn't any kind of framework or library or stuff like that. It is simply a naming method that's going to help you know which elements are you styling. Block, element, modifier. I'm going to leave a link about this down in the description, so if you want to read more, you can definitely do that. Our div is also going to have a class name equal to app__navbar dash logo, and then our UL is also going to have a class name equal to app__navbar dash links. And of course, our individual link also has to have a class name, which is going to be equal to app__flex. We discussed that. This is going to center the element. And then finally, p-text, which is going to make it a paragraph text. And this is going to be it for now, but of course we have to implement the styles to be able to see the changes. So let's clean up our working environment by closing all of the files we're currently not using. You can hold Ctrl and then press W a few times, but make sure that you're in the Visual Studio Code window. There we go. We're going to close all of that and just open up the things that we need: Frontend React, source, components, navbar, and we also need a navbar.scss. So let's start with styling the navbar. That's going to be .app underscore underscore navbar, and let's give it a width of 100%. Then let's also make it a display is equal to flex, justify dash content is equal to space between, and align dash items is equal to center. Okay, now we have our logo on the left side and all of our links on the right side. Let's also provide a bit of padding, like 1 rem on top and bottom and 2 rem on left and right. There we go, this is looking more like it right now. It would be also cool to provide a light background, so we can say background is equal to RGBA 255, 255, 255, which is going to be a plain white color, but we can provide opacity of 0.25. That's going to make it just a bit lighter, and it's going to appear like it's above the current background. One cool CSS property is the backdrop dash filter. In here, we can say blur of around 4 pixels, and it's hard to notice right now, but once we scroll later on, you'll be able to notice that there is kind of a blurry background around the navigation bar. And since this property is not available on all browsers, we have to copy it, paste it below, and then say dash WebKit dash backdrop dash filter, and then keep it at blur is 4. Let's also add a border of 1 pixel solid RGBA 255, 255, 255, and then 0.18. I found that color to work best for the border. It's barely noticeable. Our navigation bar is going to have a position equal to fixed so that it stays on top. And there we go. Now you can see the backdrop I was talking about. It's blurred behind. And we also want to provide a Z index of 2 to make it appear above the content. There we go. Now let's style this logo a bit. And we can do that by saying .app underscore underscore navbar dash logo. Display is going to be flex. Justify dash content is going to be flex dash start. And align dash items is going to be center. That's going to space it up just a bit. But now check this out. This is going to be the magic of using SCSS. Instead of repeating this entire class and then targeting the image inside of it, to create a completely new style sheet right here below the current one, what you can do with SCSS is have nesting properties. So if we're already talking about this, why create a new class? We can simply take this image and say, target the image that's inside of the app navbar logo. That makes more sense because if you look at the JSX, there actually is an image tag inside of a div with a class name app navbar logo. So this just makes more sense and it saves some lines of code. Let's change the width to be 90 pixels and also the height to be something like, let's do 20. There we go. One crazy thing about this is that we can keep nesting however we want, and we can also add media queries straight for specific elements. Like right here, we can say media screen and min-width is 2000 pixels. So this is going to be for extra large devices. There, we want to increase the width and the height a bit. So we can copy this and change the width to be 180 pixels and height to be 40 pixels. Of course, this is only noticeable on extra large devices, but I just wanted to show you that we can add media queries straight inside of the elements or specific classes. Now let's move on to our links, which look quite ugly right now. That's going to be .app underscore underscore navbar dash links. There, we can set the flex to be equal to 1, like this. That's going to make this div take up the rest of the space that logo doesn't take. Then we can make this container display flex, justify content center, and align dash items center. Now they're appearing in a row because as soon as you apply the display flex property, everything appears in a row. Then we want to apply the list style equal to none, but I think that's already applied because we use the p-text tag. Then we can target the individual li item inside of the app navbar links. Let's give them some margin, like 0 and then 1 rem. Okay, this is already looking just a bit better. Of course, the cursor needs to be pointer because the user needs to know that this is actually clickable. And we're gonna change the flex dash direction to be equal to column. Now, remember, inside of this li, there is a div and there is an anchor tag. And using SCSS, we can specifically target this div that's inside of the li as well as the anchor tag that's inside of the li and apply specific styles to them. So this div is going to have a width of 5 pixels. It's also going to have a height of 5 pixels. It's going to have a background, which is transparent. And it's also going to have a border dash radius of 50%. Finally, let's apply a margin bottom of 5 pixels. As soon as we save that, you won't be able to notice the changes yet. But as we style the anchor tag, you'll be able to see the things that these changes made. So for our anchor tag, let's change the color to be equal to var and then dash dash gray dash color. So in here, we're actually using the CSS variables that we created right inside of our index.css. This is great for theme colors that you'll be reusing across your entire application. Then let's set the text decoration to be equal to none to remove that ugly underline. There we go. It's already starting to look more like it. Let's change the flex direction to be equal to column. Also, of course, text transform is going to be uppercase. Okay, that's looking more like it right now. And let's also add the font dash weight to 500, which is going to make it bolder. In this case, let's also apply a transition. And transition is going to be all 0.3 seconds and ease in out. This transition will be visible once we add the hover. And take a look at this. Instead of writing a new class, a and then hover like this, you can immediately just put a $sign here, which means that this is referring to the element we're inside of, and then hover. So now you know that this hover is referring to this anchor tag right here. Inside of this hover, we want to change the color of the anchor tag to var dash dash secondary dash color. Now, if we save that, you can see that our color slowly transitions into blue. It's a quick transition, doesn't take a few seconds, but rather just 0.3 seconds to get to full blue color. Great. Now we also want to add a hover to our li, so you know what to do. Right here, we have to find where our li is, and it's ending right here. So we can say and hover. Inside of this hover, we're gonna want to target the div and change the background color to be equal to var dash dash secondary dash color. So if we save that, you can notice that now we have this dot, and that is what that div was for. You can see width 5 pixels, height 5 pixels, and then border radius 50 to make it in a circle. So now this is looking great. Once you actually hover over it, you get that dot indicating that you want to go to that section. And if we look at the finished application and hover over these, you can see that we've achieved the desired state regarding our navigation bar. But what happens on mobile devices? We cannot fit all of these properties, so we have to turn this into a hamburger menu. Once you click over it, then everything pops up from the right side. That is going to be our next task, so we have to go back into our nav bar, and below it, we have to implement the mobile navigation bar. Right below our UL, we're going to create a div element right here that's going to have a class name equal to app underscore underscore navbar dash menu. And in there, first of all, we just want to have one icon. So let's go ahead and import the icons at the top. We're going to need two different icons. So we can say import hi menu alt 4 as well as the hi x. And these are coming from react-icons /hi. We're gonna also use Framer Motion here, so let's import in curly braces as well, motion, which is coming from Framer-motion. Now we can scroll down, and just at the top right here, we can use our first icon, which is a self-closing tag of HI menu Alt 4. And we're going to add an onClick property on it, where we're gonna have a callback function. And once somebody clicks it, we're gonna toggle the state. So set toggle is set to false. Of course, this set toggle doesn't exist yet. So just at the top, we can create a new state. There is a cool shortcut. You just start typing use state, and then you can click this use state snippet right here, which is going to create it for you. Now, without moving your cursor, just start typing the name, toggle, press tab, and then you can immediately set the default value. The last thing we can do is simply import use state from React. Now in here, I miswrote this is going to be true because we want to open our menu. And then just below that, we can create a dynamic code block where we can say if toggle is true. In that case, we want to render our mobile navigation bar. And we can put this in one line like this. Now our navigation is going to be a div, but a special div, a motion.div. So this is how you use Framer Motion. You just type motion and then the element you want to use. We're going to put this in multiple lines because we want to add some properties to it. More specifically, while in view, then that's going to be an object that's going to have x property equal to 300 and then 0, meaning it's going to take 300 pixels. And we also want to add a transition, and that transition is going to have a duration, which is going to be 0.85 seconds, and also ease is going to be ease out as a string. Of course, if you want to learn more about all of the properties that you can use while using Framer Motion, you can check the framermotion.com site, and in here you can see the overview as well as all of the components and animations that you can use. So if you want to learn more on how to create animations using Framer Motion, definitely make sure to check out their documentation. But for this video, I'm going to explain every single line that we write. If you'd like me to create a more detailed video on Framer Motion and animations in React, just feel free to like this video and let me know in the comments. I might do a project that's solely teaching you animations. With that said, we can go back to our app and we can add something inside of that div. Right here, we of course have to have our X icon. So that's going to be hi X, and it's going to have an on click, which we can basically copy from here. The only difference is that it's not going to be set to true, but rather we want to close it. So it's going to be set to false. And then inside of there, we can simply copy our entire menu list right here, paste it just below our icon. And let's see if we have to change something. Our LI is not going to have these properties at all. The only thing it's going to have is going to be the key, but it's not going to be link anymore. We just want to show the item. So we want to differentiate these links from the links above. In this case, we don't have to have this div, and the anchor tag is going to still be the same, but we also want to close our navigation bar if the item is clicked. So on this anchor tag, we can also add an on click to close it once we click on a specific link. Let me show you what I mean. If we open up our navigation bar and go to contact, we want to close our navigation because we want to see the actual section we're going to. Great. So that part is now done. Of course, we are yet to implement the styles for this. So let's see how is it going to look right now. So right now, if we collapse it, nothing is going to happen. So let's go to our styles, and we want to add something to the app navbar links. So you can click right here. That's going to point you to the end of this specific style. And right here, still inside of it, we want to add a media query. That's going to be add media screen, and we can set the max width to be equal to something like 900 pixels. So for devices wider than 900 pixels, we want to set a display is equal to none because we want to trigger a specific menu. And there we go. Now, of course, below this entire app navbar links, we can target .app__navbar-menu. And in here, we can set the width to be 35 pixels. Height is going to be 35 pixels. Border radius is going to be 50%. And position is going to be relative. Nothing is happening yet, but let's add a few more styles. Display is going to be set to flex. Justify-content is going to be center, as well as the align-items is going to be center. Finally, we want to change the background color to be var-secondary-color. Okay, there we go. We're working on this button right here. And now let's target the SVG inside of that button. In here, we can immediately target the SVG element. Let's give it a width of something like 70%. Let's give it a height of 70% as well. And the color can be var dash dash, and then that's going to be white dash color. There we go. This is already looking more like it. Now we want to target a div that's below this SVG. So we can say div. Position is going to be fixed. And if we save this, nothing is going to happen yet. We can slowly see it if we one time click on this specific element, but it quickly disappears. So let's keep adding more things to it until we can see it for the entire time. The top is going to be 0 because we want this menu bar to appear at the top. The bottom is going to be 0 as well. Right is going to be set to 0, and then Z index is going to be set to 5. Let's also give it padding is equal to 1 rem. Width is going to be set to 80%, not 100. So let's change this to 80. There we go. Now we can see what we're working on. We have our home, about, work, skills, and contact. Height is going to be set to 100 VH, not percent VH, which stands for vertical height. And now everything comes down to the bottom. But a quick display flex is going to fix that. Then we have to add the justify-content is going to be flex-end. Align-items is going to be flex-end as well. And flex-direction is going to be set to column. Now we can add the background. In this case, background is going to be URL /assets/bg white.png. We cannot see it yet, but I think it just covered the text. Then we also want to add the background-color equal to var-white-color. We also want to use the background-size, which is going to be cover. And finally, background-repeat is going to be set to repeat. Let's save it, reload the page. And if we click it, now we can see that we have this nice sidebar that pops up, but we have our content at the bottom right, which doesn't look good just yet. But we're going to fix that really soon. Let's add a box shadow on top. So that's going to be box-shadow 0, 0, and then 20 pixels. And the color is going to be RGBA. I found the numbers 168, 168, and then 168. And then the opacity 0.15 to work the best. So if we save this, you can see this light shadow appear right here. Now we're still styling this div right here. If you think about it, that div is going to be the motion div we're talking about, but we also have an SVG inside of it, which is going to be the close icon. So now let's style the close icon. Remember, we're still inside of the div, but now inside of the SVG as well. I think we can mostly copy what we had from the old SVG, paste it here, but the width and the height are not going to be 70%, they're going to be 35 pixels. And most importantly, the color is not going to be white, it's going to be secondary. Now we can see this big close icon. Let's also add a bit of margin, 0.5 rem and 1 rem on left and right. Finally, and most importantly, we want to style our list. So right here, we can target the UL. Let's give it a list style to be equal to none to remove those bullet points. That didn't seem to do it yet, but we can easily remove them on the list item as well. So we're going to keep it for now. Then, of course, we want to change the margin to be 0 and padding to be 0. And also, let's change the height to be 100% as well as the width to 100%. So now our UL list is taking the entirety of this space. Let's make it a display is equal to flex. Justify dash content is equal to flex dash start. Align dash items is equal to flex dash start. And finally, flex dash direction is set to column. I'm gonna reload the page. Click this button right here. And all of our content is still on the bottom right. Finally, let's transition to changing the LI right here. Let's set the margin to be equal to 1 rem on every single item. And it looks like to me that these styles are not getting applied. So what I'm going to do is go back in here and look into here. It looks like we're missing this UL right here. And that's the reason why the styles haven't been applying. So what we need to do is simply copy this entire UL and wrap our LIs with it. That was a rookie mistake on my end. So let's simply wrap everything with a UL. And in this case, we don't need our class name. Let's save it. And there we go. This is looking so much better. I was wondering why the styles haven't been applying, but that is now fixed. Inside of our LI, we're going to have an A element, which is an anchor tag. So we can simply set the color of that anchor tag to be var, and then that's going to be gray color. So right here, gray, there we go. Of course, we want to remove that ugly text decoration, which is going to be set to none. Font dash size is going to be set to 1 rem. Text dash transform is going to be set to uppercase. There we go. And font dash weight is going to be set to 500. Again, we can copy the transition we had above. So let's find our transition. There we go, as well as the hover. We can go down and paste that transition right here inside of our anchor element alongside the hover. Let's save it. And now this is going to slowly turn into blue. Great. These are the best transitions and animations when you can barely notice them, but they are there and they improve the quality of your software. Now we want to go all the way out to this div. Let's see, where is it ending? So it's ending right here on this purple tag in my case. And we want to add a media query right above it. So there's going to be a media query, media screen, and we also want to add min width in this case. So let's change this to min width, which is going to be set to 900 pixels. There, we simply want to set the display to be equal to none. This way, if we expand this over 900 pixels, this is going to completely disappear. And of course, we have to repeat the procedure with our entire menu, app navbar menu, so we can simply copy this and paste it here as well. That's going to remove that icon. Now we have just the menu for the desktop devices. And if we do this, a new menu is going to appear. That is beautiful. And with that, we're done with the styles for our mobile menu. Now let's expand this to the full browser size, full HD, and it's looking glorious. It's looking great. We have our name, our logo on the top left, and also we have our links in the middle. Now, if we right click and click inspect, right now I'm testing on iPhone 12 Pro. You can see that this is looking great as well. Our menu blurs everything that's been needed. This is going to be moved down later on. And we have this nice hamburger menu that when you click it, shows a great mobile menu with this clean background with the circles. Looking great, and we are ready to start coding our main hero section. Let's get started right away by collapsing this a bit, closing our navigation bar, and then collapsing everything, going to front end, source, app, and then you can simply control click header. This is going to be the section that we're going to implement next. So let's close this as well and prepare everything for our next section. To start with our header here, we can first import motion from framer-motion because we're going to animate it. And then we also want to import some images. So right here, we can say import images, which is going to be coming from // constants. Our header CSS is already imported. So we can start with the div wrapping our entire header or a hero component, however you want to call it. In here, our div is going to have a class name equal to app__header and also app__flex. Inside of there, we're going to have an animated motion.div. And that div is going to have a few animation properties, such as while in view, there we want to give it an X property, which is equal to -100 and 0, meaning that it's going to animate from the minus value. You're going to see it in action really soon. And then we also want to change the opacity of the animation. So it's going to animate from 0 to 1, meaning from fully invisible to fully visible. Just below that, we're going to have our transition, which is going to be equal to duration of 0.5 seconds. And finally, the class name is going to be set to app__header-info. Inside of our motion div, we're going to have a normal div. And this div is going to have a class name equal to app__header-badge. Inside of there, we can have one more div, which is going to have a class name equal to badge-cmp and also app__flex. Inside of there, we're going to have a friendly span, which is simply going to have a wave emoji. So we can simply Google for wave emoji. And right here, you can slowly copy it and paste it right into here. There we go. Below that friendly wave emoji, we can have a div that's going to have a style, an inline style, equal to margin left is 20. And inside of there, we can have our p tag for paragraph that's simply going to say, hello, I am. Let's also give it a class name equal to p-text. And just below that, we can have an h1 element that's going to have a class name equal to head-text, and it can say your name. So let's stay consistent and use Mikhail right here. Of course, you can definitely put your own name right here. That's the whole reason why you're doing this. And we can still see that that is happening, but our header is still below our navigation bar. Of course, we're going to fix this as soon as we add styles. But for now, just so we can see what we're doing, you can go to app and simply comment out the navigation bar, and there we go. Now you can see your name here, and if you reload, you can see that it animates from -1 pixels. See that? From the left to the right. And the opacity also changes from 0 to 1, but it is incredibly quick, 0.5 seconds. If you increase this to like 5 and reload, you can notice how slowly it moves 100 pixels and changes the opacity. Framer motion is really powerful and quite intuitive. Now below, not this div, but rather this entire badge div, we're going to have one more div. This div is going to have a class name equal to badge tag-cmp and also app__flex. There we want to have two different paragraphs, so we can copy this one and paste it 2 times. They're both going to be p text, but in here we can say what are we doing. Let's say that you are a web developer, and also right here you can say freelancer. Or maybe you do UI UX design as well, so you can put that here, or whatever else explains what you best do. There we go. Of course, it's not looking great at the moment because we haven't added any styles. Now, below this motion div, we're going to create 2 more motion divs. So motion.div, and we can already copy it and leave some space for the next one. Inside of this second motion div, we're going to also add some properties here, and we can copy these 3 that we already have. There we go. Paste them right here. Of course, they're not going to be the same. For the second one, we just want to change the opacity. It can also be the duration of 0.5 seconds, and we can also specify a new property, delay children. So we're going to delay the display of children for 0.5 seconds. So first, this div is going to happen, and only then are the elements inside of it going to start showing up. And the class name is not going to be header info, it's going to be header img. So inside of there, we just want to have one img tag, and it's going to have a source equal to images.profile. And alt tag is going to be profile-bg. There we go. Our huge Mikhail is right here. And now you can notice that this is going to look a bit empty. There's just a gray background all around our Michael. But what we can do is we can add a new background right there. And that background is going to be a motion.img. So this is the first time that we're animating an image instead of a div, but you can definitely do that. You can animate any element you'd like. And right here, we also need to have these 3 properties, but in this case, we're not going to change the opacity. Rather, we're going to change the scale. The duration is going to be 1 second, and the ease can be set to ease in out. This simply signifies how the animation is going to play out. Is it going to be faster at the start, or is it going to be faster at the end? Of course, we need to provide all other basic image properties like source, images.circle, and also we can provide the alt tag, which is going to be profile-_circle. And finally, class name is going to be overlay_circle. We can delete this class name from before right here. If you reload the page and scroll down, you can see this big circle appear. Of course, with styling, we're going to make that circle appear behind Michael. So the last thing we have to do is implement the last motion div. This motion image is going to be a self-closing tag. You can also do that using Framer Motion. So we don't need this, and we can space this out properly. Great. So our last motion div is going to have variants. And in here, we can provide different variants on how we want to scale different elements inside of this div. This variant is going to have a few properties, so we can name it something like scale variance, and then we can declare it at the top above our component. Const scale variance is equal to an object where while in view, then we can provide specific properties, and that's going to be an object. Of course, in here, we don't have an equal sign. That's going to be a colon. We want to change the scale from 0 to 1. We also want to change the opacity from 0 to 1. We also want to add transition, which is going to be an object that's going to have a duration equal to 1. And the ease is going to be set to ease in out, like that. We added quite a lot of properties to make this animation even better. Now we can copy scale variance and put it right here under variant. We also want to have while in view, and that is going to be equal to scale variance dot while in view. Finally, we need a class name, which is going to be simply app__header dash circles. And what are we going to put inside of this div? Well, remember those little floating bubbles appearing behind Michael? that have images of different technologies, well, that's exactly what we're doing. So we can open a dynamic block of code, have an array, images.flutter, images.redux, and images.sass. Then we can simply call the .map, get an individual circle, as well as the index, and then we can instantly return something. And that something that we're going to return is going to be a div that's going to have a class name equal to circle dash cmp app underscore underscore flex. And it's going to have a key, of course, because we're mapping over elements, that's going to say circle dash and then index. And inside of there, we can render an image that's going to have a source equal to circle and an alt, which is going to be equal to, let's simply say circle. There we go. Let's save it. Now let's see if we can see some circles around here. Nope, they just quickly flash and then they're gone. So of course, we'll have to modify this with styles. But that's good because now we implemented the entirety of our header and now we can focus on adding the styles. To open up the styles, just go to header and then header.scss. Inside of here, since we're working on a main section that we want to be able to scroll to, we're going to give it an ID of home, and that's how we're going to style it. Of course, our header right now doesn't have that ID, so let's provide ID equal to home. Inside of our home, we want to have the position is equal to relative. Then we want to give it a background as well, not a background color, just a background that's going to be a URL. And that's going to be assets/assets/bgimg.png. That just added another circle right here, but it's going to look so much better once we actually add all the styles. And if we expand this, we can barely see these big icons right here. Don't worry about all of this mess, these circles, icons, and our Happy Michael, because we are going to style all of this right away. So let's get to it. Let's change the background dash size to be equal to cover. And this is something that you're going to always do whenever you're using an image as a background. Then we want to set the background dash repeat to repeat, as well as background dash position to be equal to center. Then we want to disable the padding to do .app__wrapper. Padding is going to be set to 0. And also later on, we're going to add a copyright. So right now we can immediately set a display is equal to none right here. Now let's start styling our app header. So just below this home, we're going to do the .app__header, and we're going to set the flex to be equal to 1. Then we want to change the width to be equal to 100%, as well as the height to be equal to 100%, because we want our main section to take the entirety of the page. Then finally, flex-direction is going to be set to row. We want to set this explicitly here because we can change it later on depending if we're on mobile or desktop device. Let's provide some paddings like 6 rem, 2 rem, and then 0. There we go. That provided some space for the navigation bar, so I think we should be able to bring it back right now. There we go. This is already looking like something. Well, who am I lying? It's still looking really, really bad. But let's continue. So right here, we're going to add some media queries because this is not going to look good on all devices right out of the box. Add media, screen, and min-width 2000 pixels. So this is going to be for incredibly large devices. Padding top is going to be 8 rem. Now we can duplicate this 2 more times. And for the second one, we're going to have max width. So if the maximum width is up to 1200 pixels, in that case, we want to change the flex-direction to be equal to column. That means for mobile and tablet devices, as you can see right here. But if we expand to desktop, then this goes in a row. Great. So let's go back. And the last one is going to be purely for mobile devices, where max width is going to be 400 pixels. And there we just want to reset the padding. So padding is going to be 6 rem, 1 rem, and 2 rem. So if we collapse this, you can see that it's looking kinda okay on mobile, but that's going to be fixed really soon. So now we can focus on the header info, which is this part right here. So that's going to be .app__header -info. We can set the flex to be equal to 0.65 because we want this to take about 65% of the screen. Then display is going to be set to flex. Flex-direction is going to be set to column. Justify-content is going to be set to flex-start. Align-items is going to be set to flex-start as well. And finally, height is going to be set to 100%. Add media, screen, and in this case, we want to have max width of 2000. So this is for extra large devices. There, we're gonna put the width of 100% as well and set the margin-right to be equal to 0 rem. There we go. Now we can see that this comes right here. Now we want to change the header badge. So let's go down, .app__header -badge. Let's give it a width of 100%. Let's make display equal to flex, justify-content to flex-end, as well as the align-items to flex-end. And finally, we want to make it flex-direction is equal to column. There we go. Now we want to change the badges. So specifically, we can say .badge-cmp and then comma .tag-cmp. So we're changing both of these tags at the same time, padding 1 rem on top and bottom and 2 rem on left and right. There we go. Let's also give it a border. So border is going to be var -white -color. Okay, we cannot see it yet. Let's scroll down. Nope, nothing to see here. But just a few more properties and we'll be able to see the changes. Border-radius is going to be 15 pixels. Flex-direction is going to be set to row. Width is going to be set to auto. And finally, box shadow, which is going to give it that floating effect, is going to be set to 0, 0, 20 pixels. And then the color is going to be RGBA 0, 0, 0, which is black, and then 0.1. There we go. Now we can see this kind of 3D illusion, and this element is popping up in the air. Now let's specifically target the tag, so we can copy this and paste it below. .tag-cmp, and let's change the flex-direction to be equal to column. There we go. Also, margin-top is going to be 3 rem. There we go. So this is already looking more like it. We can also change the paragraph inside of there to give it a width of 100%, as well as the text-transform of uppercase. And finally, text-align is going to be set to right. There we go. This is already looking much better. Now, below our tag, we can target the span element, give it a font-size of 2.5 rem. There we go. This just increased the size of our wavy icon. And we can also add a media query where media, screen, and in this case, that's going to be min width is 2000 pixels for extra large devices. In that case, we want to increase the font size to 5 rem to make it incredibly big. We can go outside of our span element and add one final media query, media, screen, and max width is going to be 1200 pixels. So if it's above the tablet and mobile size, then we want to justify content to flex start and also align-items to flex-start. There we go. So it's here right now. And as we expand it, you'll see it comes down here, but on tablet size, which is around here, it looks like this. Finally, we have to focus on this circle as well as these icons, which we're going to turn to circles as well. So if we scroll down, just below our last curly brace, we're going to add the .app__header - circles. We're going to change the flex property to be 0.75. Let's also change the display to be equal to flex. Flex-direction is going to be set to column. Justify-content is going to be set to space evenly. Align-items is going to be flex-start. We can also change the height to be 100%, and margin-left is going to be set to 1 rem. The reason why I'm not showing you any changes or saving this file is because this is still going to look bad until we style these individual images. And now is the time to do that. We can say div and give it a width of 100 pixels as well as the height of 100 pixels. Then we can also give it a border-radius 50% to make it a circle. Also, background is going to be set to var -white -color. And then finally, that box shadow, which we can simply copy from above. There we go. Paste it right inside of here. And finally, we have to change the image tag to be width is 60%. And also height is going to be 60% as well. And there we go. We have these 3 nice circles with technologies you're proficient in. I personally don't know Flutter, so I would remove this, but seems like Michael knows it. Of course, you want to put your own best technologies right here. So if you are a phenomenal React developer or maybe React Native, whatever it is you're doing, definitely put it here. Now we want to make the circles just a bit different so that they're not boring. So we can go outside of this div and then say div nth child, and then we can say 1. So this is targeting the first child. We can give it a width of 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels as well. Now we can duplicate this 2 more times, target the second child, and let's say that it's going to have a margin of 1.75 rem, and we're going to change the width to be equal to 150 pixels and height to 150 as well. As you can see, they're looking just a bit different now. And let's say you're not that good at Sass, we can simply decrease the width and height of this to 70 pixels. There we go. Of course, we want to change the nth child to be equal to 3. And now you became so much more creative because you don't have 3 of the same circles. You made them different sizes and actually positioned them differently. So right now, you basically become a web designer. Jokes aside, of course, let's make this mobile responsive as well. So we can add a media query with screen, and min-width is going to be 2000 pixels. In there, we can basically copy all of these 3 divs, paste them here, and then just make them a bit larger since we're working with really large devices. Let's do 400 for the first one. Let's do something like 170 for the second one, and we don't need this margin. And finally, let's do 200 for the third one. Now, if we increase this, not sure if we'll be able to notice it, but I think our circles just got a bit bigger. It's hard to say really. So let's move this here. And finally, we want to add one more media query, add media screen max-width 1200 pixels. In this case, we want to change the width to be equal to 100%, flex-direction to be set to row, flex-wrap to be set to wrap, margin-left to be set to 0, and finally change the div to have a margin of 1 rem. There we go. So now on smaller devices, these circles are going to appear, let's say in a column below our Michael, and on desktop, they're going to appear right next to him. Looking great. So let's keep doing our styles to make it even better. The last thing we want to change is going to be the app header image. So let's go back to header CSS, create that class right there, set a flex to be equal to 1, and the height to be equal to 100%. We also want to make it a display flex. Justify dash content is flex dash end. Align dash items is flex dash end as well. And position is going to be relative. This is going to move our Michael relatively to the left. And let's also change the image, the width to be equal to 100%. And object dash fit is going to be contain. It looks like to me that the only thing we have to contain about Michael is his great smile. So if we save this, yep, that definitely did it. Let's also change the Z index to 1. And now, of course, we have to position him properly. So let's just go below this image, dot overlay underscore circle. Position is going to be absolute. And here he is. This circle is covering him. So let's go ahead and set the left to be 0, right to be 0 as well, bottom is going to be 0, and Z dash index is going to be 0. Now Michael is coming in front of the circle really proudly. Finally, let's change the width of the circle to be 100% and also the height to be 90%. There we go, looking great. Finally, on mobile devices, we have to add a media query, media screen, and max width 1200 pixels. In there, we can set the margin to be 2 rem and then 0 on left and right. Right now, this is looking like a tablet size to me, and it's looking great. But if we expand it to its full HD glory, this is looking great. This looks like a really inviting hero section, and it looks like Michael knows what he's doing. He has his thumbs up, and he says, I know Flutter, I know Redux and Sass, and I am a web developer. Hire me. You can do the same after you finish this portfolio. So now let's go ahead and collapse this and go to our second section, which is going to be our About section. In here, you can really show what you're all about. So the About section is going to be next. To start coding out our About section, we can first import a few things that we're going to use across this file. So let's start with import motion, which is going to come from framer-motion. Then we're going to also need a few things from React, and these are going to be the most popular hooks: use state and use effect. There we go. That's going to be it for now, and then later on we're going to add a few more things here. But for now, let's start focusing on the JSX. Inside of here, we're going to return an empty React fragment, just like this. And then inside of there, we first want to have an h2. This h2 is going to have a class name equal to head-text. Inside of there, we can say something like, I know that, and then in here, we can create a span element. So I know that, let's space this out properly. There we go. I know that, and then inside of the span, we're gonna say good design, and then outside, we can say means, and then one more time inside of the span, good business. Okay, and we can put a lowercase t on that. Let's see how does that look like. Already looks really good, but of course we want to space it out a bit. So let's add a break tag after the first span right here, br. There we go. I know that good design means good business. That's looking good. If we expand this side just a bit, we can see that the text is still a bit too close together. So later on, we're going to provide some spacing in between the spans and the rest of the text. But for now, let's focus on our About section. So below this h2, we're going to create a div, And this div is going to have a class name equal to app underscore underscore profiles. Inside of here, we want to dynamically loop over our about section. So what we can do is at the top, let's create a const, something like abouts, which is going to be an array, and more specifically, an array of objects where each about is going to have a title, something like web development. Then we can have a description. Let's do something like, I am a good web developer. And then finally, we're going to have something like an image URL. But for now, we can leave that empty right here. So let's put it as an empty string. And then we're going to have a few of these. Let's say web development, web design, and we can also put UI, UX here. And the last one can be something like, let's do web animations. Or of course, you could have put front end, back end, full stack, or something like that. Of course, we have to provide commas at the end of each row. There we go. And now we can loop over our abouts. So right here, abouts.map, we're gonna get an individual about and also an index. And we want to instantly return something. And for each about, we're gonna return a motion.div. We can expand this as it's going to have quite a few properties. For example, it's going to have a while in view, and it's going to have the opacity of 1. Then we can provide while hover. In that case, it's going to have a scale of 1.1 to make it just a bit bigger. We can also provide a transition, which is going to last, meaning duration, 0.5 seconds, and type is going to be tween. Of course, if you're not sure what does this mean, as whenever you're using any kind of library, just make sure to Google Framer Motion documentation tween. And now let's add a class name, which is going to be app underscore underscore profile dash item. And finally, we need to have a key, which is going to be equal to about dot title plus index. Inside of there, we're going to render an image. So right here, we can say img, and then we're going to have a source. In this case, the source is going to be about dot img URL. We also need to have an alt tag, which is going to be about dot title. Below our image, we're going to have two more things. First of all, an h2 element with a class name equal to bold dash text. It's also going to have an inline style equal to margin top 20 pixels. And there we can render about dot title. And finally, we can duplicate this line, change this to a p tag, change the class name to p-text, and the style to margin top 10 pixels, and there we can render about dot description. Let's save it. And as you can see, we have a few different sections that once you hover over them, they scale to 1.1 as indicated here. And right now we don't have any images as the image URL string is currently empty. But as we loop over the real items, that's going to change. Just to be able to properly test it out, let's find a demo image URL. At the top, we can import our images by saying import images, and that's going to be from //constants. And I think our image is under about 0. So let's do right here, images.about01. In here, we can copy that, 02, 03, and finally images 04. Now, if we save that, this is looking kind of funky. We of course have to modify the styles. So let's go ahead and do that right away. We can go to about.scss. First of all, we can target the .app__about. And there we can change the flex to be 1, change the width to be 100%, and change the flex direction to be set to column. That's going to make the text appear above. Then we can say .app__profiles. There we can again use display flex, but this time we're going to justify the content to be equal to center, and we're going to align the items to be flex-start. As you can see, now the items are going in a row, but this is still far from good. So let's add the flex-wrap to be equal to wrap, and finally margin-top is equal to 2rem to divide it from the title. Now we can start styling each individual about item by saying .app__profile-item. The width of the item is going to be 190 pixels. The display is going to be set to flex. Justify-content is going to be flex-start. Align-items is going to be flex-start as well. And flex-direction is going to be set to column. Finally, each item is going to be divided with a margin of 2rem. And finally, let's style these big ass images. So image width is 100%. And there we go. Already looking so much better. Let's also give them a constant height by saying the height is 170 pixels. Border-radius is going to be 15 pixels. And finally, object-fit is going to be set to cover. That way, images are not going to be skewed. And the last thing we have to do below this image is provide a media query. So media screen and min-width is going to be 2000 pixels. So this is again for extra large devices. There, we're going to increase the width to 370 pixels and also increase the margins to 2rem on top and bottom and 4rem on left and right. Finally, we can also change the height of the image. So let's copy this, paste it inside of the query, and the only thing we're going to change is going to be the height to 320 pixels. Now, if we expand this, you'll see that it looks great on all kinds of devices. There we go. Now, to quickly fix our text spacing right here, we can go back to our about, and we can put all of this in one line. Just like this. I know that, and then there's a space here between the span, and then means also a space here between the span. And that's going to provide the spacing. The reason it didn't work before is that these were all new lines. So the compiler doesn't really know where is the space here. It just cuts it off. But if we do it like this, it keeps track of all the spaces. Great. I know that good design means good business. But in here, if you are a developer, and we all are developers, you can say good development means good business. That word is just a bit too big, but on bigger devices, it shouldn't be any problem. But if you want to be sure that it works on all devices, good dev is going to be just fine. Or you can do something like good apps. That's also great. So what exactly are we good at? Web development, web design, UI, UX, web animations. In here, you can really do whatever you'd like. You can do front-end development. That's one thing that you're really good at. Then you could put back-end development, or you could do something like specific technologies. So let's do back-end. In here, we can do something like MERN stack, right? There we go. So this is something that you're completely free to change, both the titles as well as the descriptions. But now comes the main part of our application. This is the first time that we'll actually want to modify something from our portfolio. So if we expand this right now, you're going to notice that in here we have 4 different images, 4 different titles, as well as 4 different descriptions. Well, they're all the same now, but you'll want them to be different. So how can we actually modify this data using Sanity CMS? This is the moment you've been waiting for. We need to connect Sanity to our React application. And trust me, it's going to be fairly simple. Let's collapse this one more time. And just to have a clean working environment, I'm going to close all the files, collapse everything, and you'll want to go to Frontend React, Source, and create a new file inside of the source directory called client.js. This is going to be the place where we're going to connect our Sanity client with our React application. Let's start by importing Sanity client from @sanity/client, as well as importing image URL builder from sanity image-URL. In here, we want to export const client is equal to sanity client, which we just imported. And we want to call it as a function and provide in an object as a parameter. There, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a project ID. Then we're going to need a data set. Let's leave that as an empty string for now. We're going to need the API version as well. We're going to also need use CDN is set to true. And finally, you're going to need a token. So you might be wondering, where are we going to get all of this info from? Well, don't you worry at all. Let's go ahead and open up our terminal. We can split it by using this button right here. We can cd into backend_sanity, and we can run the command sanity manage. This is going to open up the sanity management tool. And there we go. One question answered immediately. Project ID is right here, so we can just copy it. Then we're going to have our data set. So if we go here, you're going to notice that right now we are in production, so you can simply type production. Next, we're going to need the API version, and for that, just type 2022-0201. Use CDN is already set to true, and the last thing we need is going to be the token. And to find our token, we can go to our website, expand it a bit, go to API. Under course origins, we first need to add our localhost 3000 here, and let's allow credentials and click save. Then we need to add an API token. In this case, we can say just application token, and we're going to give it editor permissions and click save. Now we're going to get the API key for this token, and you can paste it right here. Of course, to keep all of this data safe, especially the token, we can create a new .env file right in the root of our frontend React. So new file, .env, and then you can create two new variables, React_app_sanity_project_ID. And then that's going to be the name of your Sanity project ID. And then we can repeat the process for React app sanity token. And that's going to be equal to this entire token right here. Let's paste it. And whenever you change the .env, you have to reload your application. So let's press Ctrl+C, Y, and then npm start one more time in our client side to run our application again, so that it can get populated with these new variables. The last thing you have to do is copy these variable names. And then in the client, instead of the project ID, now we're going to use process.env.react_app_sanity_project_ID, and here process.env.react_app_sanity_token. Great. Now we're successfully connected with the Sanity client. And what we have to do is say const builder is equal to image URL builder and call it and pass in the client. This is going to be useful for our images. And lastly, we have to say export const URL for source. And then we have to say builder.image and provide the source right here. This is just some code that we always write whenever you're working with images using Sanity. But with that said, that's it. That's the entire setup. Now we can use this Sanity client to fetch real data from the Sanity dashboard. Let's go back to our source and then container and about.jsx. Instead of this boring static data right here, we're going to use React and Sanity to fetch real dynamic data from a CMS. The way in which we can do that is just create a use state field. So let's start with use state snippet. Let's call it abouts and set abouts. And at the start, it's going to be set to an empty array. Then we're going to have a use effect. We can use that use effect snippet, remove everything from the middle, and remove everything from the dependency array because we only want to run this use effect at the start once our component loads. Inside of here, we can write a query for fetching our about section. Const query is equal to a string, asterisk, and then an array sign. Inside of there, underscore type is double equal to abouts, wrapped in double quotes. Now that we have the query, we can import the client at the top by saying import URL for, as well as the client from // client. And finally, we can use client.fetch, pass in the query, and then that's going to return a promise. So we can use a .then. Inside of the .then, we're going to have our data. And the only thing we have to do is simply set abouts and populate it with data. Of course, we can also write this in one line because it's a simple one-liner, so it would be a shame not to. And there we go. Now we're populating the data with the real abouts. So let's remove the static data. And now we're mapping over the dynamic abouts coming from the CMS. So let's save it, reload the page, and scroll down. You're gonna notice that right now it is completely empty. But how can we populate it? It is as simple as going to the backend side of our application and running sanity start. This is going to open up the Sanity Studio on localhost 3333. Inside of there, we can go to our abouts and we can create our first about. I'm gonna copy the data that I had in the already deployed site. So the title is going to be a front-end developer. A description is going to be something about passion for building beautiful and functional websites. And of course, we have to drag and drop the image. So of course, this is the place where you would upload some kind of graphic that represents front-end developer or design or whatever other skill you use. In this case, we can go to our file tree, go to assets, right-click it, and click reveal in File Explorer. This is going to open up our assets. And then inside of here, I'm gonna simply drag and drop the about one. And there we go. The last thing we have to do is just click publish. Now, if we go back to our React application and reload the page, you should be able to see a new card with all of the data appear right here. It looks like we have a minor image issue. So let's go back to the code. And right here, instead of the about.image URL, we have to use that Sanity provided function URL for about.image URL. Let's save it. And just like that, the image appeared. Isn't that crazy? Now we can go back to the Sanity Studio and we can just keep adding our skills. So let's create a new document. Let's do something like web designer. I am a web designer with passion for creating beautiful websites. Great. I'm gonna pull the about to and click publish. And I wanted to speed the video up at this process so you don't have to watch me add new skills. But this process is incredibly quick. As you can see, we can just keep adding new skills, new portfolio items, new anything in a matter of seconds. And Best of all is that you don't have to be a developer to be able to update your own site. So if you want to hand over this portfolio to a non-developer person, you'll be able to give this to them and they'll be able to upload their own content to it. Now, if we go back and reload the page, you can see these 4 cards right here appear instantly. Again, one of the major points here is that a non-developer or a non-technical person can also update the site without knowledge of all of these lines of code that we just wrote, right? So be that a portfolio or a landing page for a business, such as a pizza place or a coffee shop, they are gonna be nagging you constantly. Please change my hours. I don't work from 9 to 5 anymore. Make it 10 to 5, for example, and you would have to manually go ahead, change the hours in the code. But if you give them a website using a CMS, then they can change the content and the data themselves. So be smart, give them a CMS website so that you don't have to come back and re-edit everything constantly. With that said, we've just implemented the first initial section as well as the second section. Of course, right now you can see that something is just a bit off. The second section is not taking 100% of the height of the screen, and the first one is not doing that as well. So I'm gonna show you a trick and a really useful React development practice, which is the use of higher order components. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm gonna collapse this just a bit and have our clean working environment on the left side. We are ready to implement this so-called higher order component. Alongside fixing the heights of our sections, we also have to add these social media icons at the bottom left of each section. So if we go to our finished React application, you can notice that right here we have our social media icons, and the same situation is happening right here. Also the copyright right here and the scrolling icons. So we are not going to implement all of these components every time for every single section. To fix the problem of reusing components creatively and professionally, we're gonna use higher order components. So let's go back to our application and let's wrap all of our sections with a React higher order component. What we can do is go to Explorer, Frontend React, Source, and then create one last folder called Wrapper. Inside of our wrapper, we're gonna have one file called app.wrap.js. Inside of our app wrap, we're going to run rafce, and we're going to import a few things from our components. More specifically, navigation dots and social media. And that's gonna be coming from /components. Of course, we haven't yet created these two components, so now might be the best time to do it. Let's go to our components, and then right here in the root, we're going to create a new file called socialmedia.jsx. There we can also run rafce, and we're first going to import a few icons that we're gonna use: BS Twitter and also BS Instagram. And these are coming from react-icons/BS. We can duplicate this line below, and we're gonna also import FA Facebook F, and that is coming from react-icons FA. Inside of here, we're gonna have a div, and that div is going to have a class name equal to app__social. Inside of there, I'm gonna create a div, and this div is going to wrap the first one of our icons, which is going to be Twitter. There we go. And now we can just duplicate this 2 more times. We can render Facebook for the second one, and we can render Instagram for the third one. And that's going to be all that there is for our social media.jsx. Now let's also do the navigation dots. So to do them, we can create a new component inside of the components folder called navigation dots.jsx. It's again going to be an RAFCE, React Arrow Function Export component. And inside of here, we're going to accept one prop, which is going to be active. This is going to tell us on which section are we currently. Inside of here, we're going to have a div that's going to have a class name